Because Bobby asked this question about how do Native Americans get their names, e.g. Sitting Bull, famous name, of course. Now, Bobby is part Native American, Indian, and her name, my name, is Wolf Sky Eyes. So let's ask. Joy Porter is a professor of Indigenous and Environmental History at the University of Hull. Joy, good afternoon to you.
Hello there, how are you? What a wonderful question.
It is, isn't it? Because I don't know whether you have children, Joy, but
I do.
It's all a bit random for me. So I've got 4, and I can't say that there was any serious thought that went into any of them, apart from obviously going, no, can't call them that because I knew someone at school by that name and I hated them. So, all that sort of stuff. How do Native Americans come up with these wonderfully descriptive, evocative names?
Well, when you gave me the question, I thought you meant the names themselves of the nations themselves. So I think that's 2 different stories. But when you come to names like Comanche and Apache and so on, those names have stories inside them that have stories inside them. They're often transliterated multiply. So they're words that we got when we asked other tribal groups, what do you call the folk down the road? So
So a Comanche wouldn't call himself a Comanche or herself a Comanche. It's likely that somebody up the road who may have been a Sioux went, they're Comanche because that was the story.
Well, Comanche is thought to be from a Ute word meaning they fight with us.
Right.
And the Comanche themselves are more likely to speak of themselves as Nimu, the people. So a lot of the words for Indigenous groups that we're familiar with basically mean we the people.
Right.
Which is kind of nice that that's in the American rubric today, we the people. And that's a symptom of living on a continent where there's plenty of space between you and the next set of peoples.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right, there was plenty of space. And of course, if you're a student of American history, you'll realise what America did to the Native Americans there by reservation was just sort of, well, hang on a minute. It's not like we're short of land here, really, is it? It was just obviously people were in the wrong place for others as such.
Well, colonialism is all about access to land and resources, definitely.
Yes. So you have these tribal names, and then you have these individual names where I mentioned Sitting Bull, which was mentioned by Bobby as a sort of the name of an individual, and of course. Is there any familial connection as there would be with your children? And because, of course, they would have maybe your last name or your partner's last name. Is there any sort of line that goes through, or is each individual named individually?
I think there's no more telling key to history than names, the names that people give themselves or that are given to them. For example, you can tell I'm Christian from a Christian tradition because my name is Joy, and other words like grace or so on, they're all from the Christian tradition. Names like Sitting Bull, he was Lakota Tatanka Laotaki, which I can't say properly, and obviously it's the right thing to do here is go directly to the peoples themselves if you want to find out most about their history. But often, in many tribes would have names given to children that were permitted to be used, and then they would get given names by clan mothers or elders that linked to their role.
Okay.
So the name itself could be something you might inherit, rather than in our traditions, your name, my name Joy, your name John, another, I think I think it's John is a Christian name.
Yes.
They're individual, whereas often names in many Indigenous traditions are to do with your role within a community. So it's a different way of looking at how someone sits within a society. It's about what you can give rather than what you are as an individual.
That's a this is getting quite deep, but really interesting, Joy. It is, because this is the difference between giving somebody the name of Joy or giving someone like the name of Joy and hoping that they aspire to the Christian tradition that comes with that name of Joy or Grace or John the Baptist or whatever, those sorts of things. So those names give you the aspiration to be like that person, whereas perhaps the names of Native American tribes, some Native American tribes, would be ascribed because that is the role that you'll perform within that tribe, or it would be part of something that, you come from a line of warriors or farmers or hunters or whatever role yours is within the tribe, and that is what you will be doing in the future. Very different.
The Haudenosaunee clan mothers would watch a young boy growing up and then decide what name he should have that went with his predilections and capabilities, what he could do that was best for the people.
So as he grew and his nature and his nurture showed you the man he would be, so he was named.
Yes, and of course we have as key rituals things like christening. I don't know if you were christened, but in many Indigenous traditions, they have the first laugh ceremony that goes when the baby first laughs. And that's a completely different way of understanding key moments, isn't it, within our lives?
Yeah, that's fascinating, that, isn't it? To have, because they have, a baby is born, but let's be absolutely honest here, Joy. They're pretty blooming useless for the first few weeks. Well, they are. I mean,
that's a man's way of looking at them.
But there's a lot of work to be done with them. But they're not sort of laughing. But the moment you get a reaction out of a child, that is a very, very special moment, because that's about them being part of the world. They're reacting to their environment around them over and above the basic need of feeding.
Yes, and of course many Indigenous kids would grow up in a cradle board, which is a different sort of, it wouldn't be a pram where you look at your first environment is completely different. A cradle board is you're kind of upright from the beginning because you've got a hard board at the back. So a baby has a totally different beginning in the world in many Indigenous traditions.
Fascinating stuff, Joy. You have been an absolutely brilliant expert. We've got more out of you than I've possibly hoped. And that sort of...
We have only just gone to the very beginning. There's so much to learn from Indigenous folk, and I hope we can get the GCSEs changed in this country so that people have a more accurate historical understanding of the United States, because at the minute it's still cowboys and Indians.
Yeah, and hear to that, Joy. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon on BBC Radio Bristol. Joy Porter there, Professor of Indigenous and Environmental History at the University of Hull. And I would safely say, Bobby, your question, your answer, comprehensively done.